Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update for the 26th of April 2023. Some people picked up that I get my words confused sometimes. I said Kiev instead of Moscow yesterday. I do have primary progressive multiple sclerosis, just to remind people or to let new viewers know. So one of the symptoms of that is word recall and getting words muddled up. So I do that. I obviously try not to. It's not intentional, obviously, but yeah, just to let you understand that if I cock up sometimes, I can pull out my disability card or something. Anyway, let's get on to the usual place that we start, which is the Ukrainian figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. Well, I do find these indicatively useful. They let me know of the trends of what's going on, and I think that is accurate, if not the exact numbers, particularly with, say, liquidated personnel, which is very hard to estimate accurately. 640 liquidated personnel is there or thereabouts, as it's been for the last week. So we've had fairly consistent number of troops being liquidated, as the Ukrainians say, over the last week to 2 weeks. And that's not as high as it's been. We have had 1,100 on record days, so we're somewhere between the lowest and the highest. Really is in the middle, I guess. And this reflects I think the culmination of the Russian offensive phase, as we're moving into the Russians going on to defensive, and this much vaunted counteroffensive taking place for the Ukrainians. 4 tanks, 11 APCs, that's a fairly high APC number. 14 artillery systems and pieces, that is also pretty high, a significant number. And I talk about there being an explicit targeting of Russian artillery pieces at the moment, ahead of the counteroffensive, and because they are so dangerous. 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, again targeting those for suppression or destruction of enemy air defenses, SEED operations or DEAD operations. UAVs, 3 drones taken out yesterday, 8 vehicles and fuel tanks, 7 pieces of special equipment. That is the highest I remember seeing ever. So we're now 425 days into, or 430 days, something like that, into the war. We have 352 pieces of special equipment, so less than 1 a day is the average. And then to go to 7, so you're looking at a 700% increase. That is a really significant day for the Ukrainians in that area. And again, it's similar to artillery systems, anti-aircraft warfare systems. They need to be softening the areas ahead of a counteroffensive. You can bet your bottom dollar that they are using all the intelligence sources they can and capabilities they can to find out, to target, to acquire the special equipment targets. That's electronic warfare, that's radar systems, so that they can use their drones, so they can use their aircraft effectively and safely. That's so important. So it doesn't surprise me that we have days like this. And indeed, if we look at this piece of footage, this is exactly what's going on. So Russian electronic warfare system designed to jam drones and GPS, spotted by a drone and taken out by GPS guided ammunition. So this is that's what it looks like when Jesus wet. That's what it looks like when it's alive, and this is the piece of equipment being taken out. Sorry about that musical interlude. You can see the shockwaves go out from that. So there is, I guess, good probability that that's an Excalibur round, because you're not seeing rounds being walked in. That is one hit. There's no other hits around there. That is one hit takes it out. So that's going to be a GPS guided round, something like an Excalibur round shot out of a piece of artillery. Now, JDAMs. I've been talking about JDAMs recently. JDAMs, so these are the guided, formerly dumb munitions that are dropped from airplanes, from fixed-wing aircraft, and they have guidance and fins. JDAM ER, I presume. Is this JDAM ER? I don't know. Striking Russian ammunition storages in Bakhmut. The last missile can be seen quite clearly coming down. Do you call them missiles? I don't know. Guided bomb, I guess. This inexpensive upgrade kit for unguided bombs is worth every penny. There is not much footage coming out of JDAMs, and in fact, when it does come out, people are still left thinking, well, is that JDAM or is it just, a large artillery strike or so on and so forth? You can see the size of these hits. These are significantly larger pieces of ordnance. And I believe this is in Bakhmut, and those are big hits. And these are similar to the FAB, or the FAB is similar to these that the FAB 500 that the Russians have now been using. So when I showed you yesterday that buildings in Vuhledar have been hit by these, and you can tell because they're much more significantly damaged than you would see with regular artillery. You can see why. I mean, these are okay. These aren't the FAB 500, but these are JDAMs apparently that are doing significant damage. So yeah, interesting to see that. That second one, yeah, you do see that fall. Did I miss that again? Here we go. Let's go back here. Sure, I'm sure I saw it in one of them. Oh well, but there you go. That's apparently JDAM footage. Now, talking about drones, uh, we saw drone spotting for accurate artillery. Here is a special unit of the main intelligence directorate destroying the Russian surveillance complex at the Kakhovska hydroelectric power plant. Let's check this out. Now, this is the way that war is going. The use of drones to do incredibly precise hits. This is apparently taking out like £100,000 surveillance complex within there, or $100,000, sorry. Quite how much damage it did, I don't know. But there is apparently some kind of surveillance setup inside that. Now, how they know that, I don't know. What is interesting about this is it hits that tiny window. So you are starting to see drone loitering munitions be able to be incredibly accurate with what they hit. They, instead of going in that larger window, goes in through that tiny little window there. They obviously know what they're aiming for. And indeed, here we see another first-person view drone. So these are the drones that the video camera on board looks in the direction it's traveling. And we have a drone being able to fly underneath shed roof to be able to hit some supplies and take out the supplies in there. I assume that in a few years' time, or even right now, you're going to be able to get drones that have explosives on board, and they can just hover, get to the right place. So rather than have to hit something quickly, they can. I assume you're going to get drones that can just get to the right place, and then the operator just presses a button and it just explodes. So you're going to start being able to see incredibly accurate drone usage. And maybe they can be used in assassination attempts and all sorts. Who knows? On the other hand, drones were attacking Ukraine last night. Only 3 drones were taken down, I think, in the figures, but areas affected were Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk. So Russians still using drones on a nightly basis. I guess to do exactly what I say that Ukrainians are doing in Russia and sending drones into different geographical areas around Russia, which fixes the air defense systems there. If the Russians are doing that in Ukraine, then it's doing the same kind of thing, fixing air defense systems back from the front line, and saves them being brought forward to the front line and being able to take out, fixed wing aircraft and so on and so forth. So I guess that's why they're doing these dribs and drabs type approach to hitting targets rather than saturation attacks. Right. Yesterday, I'm just going to dwell a little bit on fires. There were loads of fires across Russia yesterday. Here's a massive one that's being reported on quite a bit. Let's just mute this site just in case big loud music comes on. So here we have I think this started as a lumber fire somewhere, and it is now 92 buildings have been, well, at the point of me seeing this last night, 92 buildings have been destroyed in the area. This is in Russia. It's a huge fire, as you can see. But it wasn't the only one either. So if we have a look at what it says at least 92 private buildings were destroyed so far in a massive fire that broke out at the settlement of Sosva, Sverdlovsk Oblast in Russia. The fire was reportedly caused by the ignition of lumber and spread quickly due to gusts of wind and large amounts of dry vegetation. Just more footage of that. A village was engulfed. And this is reported by the Ministry of Emergency Situations. But what I told you previously is that it used to be the job of conscripted soldiers, because in peacetime you'd have 140,000 soldiers that, yeah, you want to train them up a little bit to get them trained for the army. But basically, the Russian government would be quite clever and say, right, we've got all these people, let's use them to do emergency services work every year so we don't have to have a huge budget for emergency services, and they put out the fires or do fire breaks and all this kind of stuff. So conscripts would traditionally be doing all that sort of work. And then since the war started, all the conscripts have been busy, doing war and stuff and training up for military activities. So there's been no one left to sort out the wildfires, to sort out, and Russia is a huge area and it suffers from quite a lot of natural fires as well as human caused ones. And last year during the war, this was a huge problem because there was no one to put out the fires. That's going to be the same this year, I'm pretty sure. Earlier in one of the many Russia on Fire posts, I told you about the disastrous attempt to burn scrubland. So was that a lumber fire, or was it actually burning scrubland to try and stop fires? And how they managed to set fire to a whole village. Well, this is how Sosva looks right now, a stunning night photo from Globus. So that's, those are all buildings by the looks of it that have been burnt down. Anyway, that wasn't the only one. There's more Russia on fire, this one from Transbaikal region. Again, remarkable negligence as grass burning went wrong, turning into a burning of a timber processing plant in the entire village of Balyaga. All of these regions lost thousands in the war, presumably skilled people. Another massive fire. I'm not making this up. These are all from today. Thanks, Carolyn, for finding some of these. In Sverdlovsk, this is the one that we've just seen at night. This is what it looked like before it became that raging fire at night. And then Yekaterinburg, the scene of a big blaze, apparently at a place that makes reinforced concrete products. Locals heard two loud explosions. Wonder if they make dragon's teeth. And then again, they even managed to burn their own graves. So this is Rybtovsk in Altai region, less than 20 miles from the border with Kazakhstan. Again, they decided to burn dry scrub grass, but forgot to put a fire break, and flames were soon seen in the town cemetery. And then there's a couple of accounts of trains being on fire, one from a couple of days ago and one from yesterday. So on and so forth. Fires are a really big problem in Russia. So let's move on to military aid, humanitarian aid, etc. Actually, very little to report today. I just want to point this out. This is nothing new, just Oryx updating or giving you a summary. Despite technically not owning any tanks, the Netherlands, so well done, Holland, has delivered and pledged 85 tanks to Ukraine. So they actually own no tanks themselves. 45 T-72 EAs, 33 Leopard 1A5s, and 7 Leopard 2A4s. This makes the Netherlands the second largest supplier of tanks to Ukraine. Quite incredible. Also, they've provided a whole heap of YPR 765s, which are these based on the old M113 APCs. They've provided a bunch of them, and we've seen them throughout this war. I mean, they supplied them quite early doors, I think. Netherlands has really come up well. Really helped Ukraine a lot. So the UK has sent thousands of rounds. The UK Defence Minister, I presume. Oh no, he's the Deputy Defence Minister, I think, James Healy. UK sent thousands of rounds of Challenger 2 ammunition to Ukraine. And this includes depleted uranium armor-piercing rounds. These are the ones that were pretty controversial. They're not controversial. They're just actually pretty basic rounds that you use in say, the Challenger 2 and other tanks as well. But these depleted uranium rounds, the reason they're so useful is because they have very dense. They're made of very dense metal, and so that's almost always more dense or denser than the target that they're hitting, and so therefore it kind of just goes through the armor of the opposition tank or whatever. These aren't like radioactive, controversial, or anything like that, but Russia has said that, oh, these are really controversial, radioactive. This is escalation, and they use it as an excuse to have a go at UK and then say that it's going to be escalatory. They haven't been actually. Russia just kind of they're all fart and no poo. They're just all big talk, and they basically had used that as an excuse to have to go at the British, but they use them themselves, right? And they've used them themselves for a long time. So just completely ridiculous. Just it was a big talking point for a while. Anyway, UK did provide these, and nothing particularly has happened as a result of that. And they appear to be those rounds appear to be going to Ukraine. Right. Now on to odds and sods. This is slightly different bit of news. It's the only odds and sods bit that I have, which is war-torn FC Mariupol has been reborn in Brazil. The least we could do to help give hope. This is a kind of bizarre bit of news. That so Mariupol is quite a large city in Ukraine. It's obviously been completely destroyed, and it had a football team that were. I mean, it's not a huge football team, but it had played in Europe, so on and so forth. Well, the Ukrainian community in southern Brazil has decided to turn its local football team into FC Mariupol instead of AA Betel. A top flight club disbanded after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in a show of solidarity with the war-torn country. AA Betel, a team from Prudentopolis region in Parania, said on Monday that they will take on Mariupol's kit, crest, and logo a year after the Ukrainian club's facilities and stadium were destroyed in the invasion, which Moscow calls a special military operation. The club represents the identity of our community, and our community is more than 70% Ukrainian and Ukrainian descendants, said the AA Batel president Alex Lopez. Ukraine has always been incredibly supportive of great Brazilian football talent and became an important gateway for players to enter the European market. This is the least we could do to help keep their club alive and give hope to Ukrainians all across the world. So that's, as the vice president of the disbanded club says, that's the FC Mariupol, the original one. We're so grateful for this warm welcome by AA Batel. The war has been devastating to our city, but to have this football team from halfway around the world offer to keep our name alive during this time in our history, it's impossible to express how much this means to us. Now, on a related note, I probably should have put a tab here for this. You can now see, I think, on Google Maps. I don't know if that's Google Maps Pro or the basic one. If you hover over Mariupol, you can now see destroyed buildings. So they've updated their footage, and someone was saying on Twitter that it's just like a black hole of depression they've got into as they're looking at their own city now, in the ruins it is. But interestingly, the Russian version of Google Maps doesn't do that. I think that was on. I reported that sort of months back, where they don't have accurate mapping of Mariupol, for example. Anyway, moving on to geopolitical news. This is another fantastic piece by Michael Weiss in Yahoo News. He's obviously got some really useful point man in or woman in Russian intelligence that is providing him or Yahoo News or someone with these really interesting strategic documents. Now, previously they'd done the document on Belarus and Moldova. So these are Russian documents giving their strategy to Russifying and fomenting discord in places like, in that case, Moldova and Belarus, with a view of them becoming part of kind of Russia again, or some kind of Soviet Union, some kind of Russian Empire, or whatever. Weiss has got hold of similar strategic papers on the Baltic nations, which are Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. You can see them here. Russia there, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, and then there's Kaliningrad, this exclave here, and these Baltic nations. Now, I won't go through what I've highlighted here because it'd take too long. I'm going to do this in the extra. Really interesting. So it looks at sort of, I guess, humanitarian ways or cultural ways of influencing these nations. It looks at economic ways and sort of military ways. Really, really interesting stuff in this. Basically, one of the claims is if these nations hadn't joined NATO, they would have been invaded already. is one opinion. I'd probably agree with that. Lots to do with language, lots to do with NGOs, non-government organizations being involved and spreading their cultural influence in this kind of Ruski Mir approach, Russian world approach to influence, so on and so forth. A really interesting, really decent article. This just what's most interesting about it, I think, is that so a lot of this strategy was developed, I guess, before the Russians went to war, because in going to war in Ukraine, the Russians have actually achieved the opposite to what the intentions of these strategic documents were. So they wanted to make sure one of the aims of these documents is to get NATO influence out of those countries. And in fact, NATO influence has now proliferated to a far greater degree. They got NATO soldiers left, right, and center in the Baltic nations. There have been diplomats that have been banned from these nations. They've got, you're not allowed in if you're Russian, basically. So they said no to Russian people who have escaped Russia to escape getting caught up in the war, to escape getting mobilized. Controversially, these nations have said no to them, so they're not allowing them in because they said they don't want that kind of influence, Russian influence in here. We're already got these issues. Language, there's sort of clamping down on Russian language being taught. And so all the intentions of these documents, and as I say, I'll go through them later, the reverse has happened in invading Ukraine. So the invasion of Ukraine, I think, from any objective standpoint, but actually from Russia's own viewpoint, is one of the worst decisions I think I can think about in the last goodness knows how long. I mean, I think in history will judge the invasion of Ukraine to be an absolutely terrible decision from any which way you look at it. Okay, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Slovakia have all taken steps to suspend the import of Ukrainian grain and other products to protect their domestic markets. Well, they've also Poland has banned sunflower oil imports from Ukraine, and Ukraine is a massive sunflower oil, sunflower seeds sort of grower, sunflower grower. That you don't grow oil. Poland. This is where I question everything I say, and then conversations get really long and tedious. Poland bans sunflower oil imports from Ukraine, contemplates other product bans. Sunflower oil is the latest Ukrainian import to be banned by Poland. So there is this growing, I guess, wedge between Ukraine and neighboring nations that they would otherwise have a really good relationship with, say, Poland, Bulgaria, Slovakia. Hungary is obviously a little bit different. This is a chronic problem, as in this is going on over time, and it's not getting any better. And this could really be quite a fundamental issue, and it really does need solving. So these trade issues between the nations involving the EU and the EU, wanting to reduce tariffs on these goods coming into the EU to help Ukraine out, but at the same time, that really causes problems with the indigenous farmers in these countries not being able to make their goods as competitively, and their livelihoods are affected. And so these nations wanting to protect their own industries and their own workforce, as well as feeling that they want to try and help Ukraine. So there's this really big tension going on. Okay, Germany's support for military aid for Ukraine remains strong, according to fresh data. 45% are in favour of unchanged military support by the West. 28% even call for a stronger commitment, and 22% advocate a reduction, including a particularly large number in Eastern Europe. So 41% in Eastern Germany want to reduce the amount of aid to Ukraine. Of course, Eastern Germany will have much greater connection to Russia. But there's lots of interesting data. And one analyst was saying one of the most interesting things here is the Greens. So the Greens are one of the strongest supporters of aid to or military aid to Ukraine. Just really fascinating, because you might not have thought that. Greens are generally sitting much further to the left, and not advocating for the military-industrial complex and that kind of stuff. But actually, they've been shown to be one of the biggest supporters. And I wonder whether there is an age element in there, whether sort of Greens might well be. So Greens are a much more established political party in Germany, and they are in coalition often. Uh, but I don't know whether they skew younger, and younger people skew more to support Ukraine. I don't know. That would just be me guessing. I would need to look at the data. I'm sure one of my many German viewers can let me know about that. Right. I don't want to like belabor a point, but Tucker Carlson, yes, he's been fired or they've gone their own ways, but fired from Fox News. It's all over the internet. So not all over the internet. It is all over the socials, but what's all over the socials as well is Tucker Carlson being invited onto Russian propagandist shows, TV, offered jobs, all this kind of stuff. All of the propagandists are talking about Tucker Carlson, which I think is interesting because I think it tells you something, right? So, but anyway, like Tucker Carlson is the name of the day on across Russian television at the moment. Uh, Vlada Knowlton says, I think this screenshot is probably my favorite. Solovyov live is waiting for you, Tucker. Who can resist an offer from that face? So, Solovyov. So loads of stuff on Tucker Carlson, bemoaning the firing of him, so on and so forth. Anyway, I just thought that was worthy of note. And just final couple of pieces. Russian private military company Wagner continues its activities all over the world. Because of this, the USA, together with its allies, is engaged in containing it. I don't know whether Wagner have been, now they're in the limelight with regard to what's going on in Ukraine, that actually it's worked against them. They probably would have continued doing their stuff, although being a concern to the West or other nations around the world. But I reckon Ukraine has probably damaged them going forward because now everyone knows about them. You and I know about them. We might not have known about them before. Public knows about them in a negative way. They are not seen in a positive light, and we are starting to know about their influence all over the world, including in Sudan at the moment. And they are starting to be named, labelled a terrorist organisation, etc., or a criminal organisation, or banned, and this and that. So now we're getting people like here, the deputy spokesman of the US State Department, during a press conference in Washington, saying we are working together with our allies and partners to curb the influence of the Wagner Group, of course, on the African continent, but also elsewhere. These are enemy number one, it seems, more globally. They are, yes, doing things on behalf of the Kremlin in an underhand, clandestine way, but they're also doing things for their own self-aggrandizement or for their own enrichment in terms of getting a cut in all the sort of diamond mines and natural resources that they can in places like Africa. So it seems that they have attracted the much greater attention from the West. Now, finally, Sweden has expelled 5 Russian embassy staff in Stockholm on suspicion of spying. Nothing unusual, but this is kind of a continued trend. Swedish Foreign Minister Tobias Billström said the alleged activities of the 5 were incompatible with their diplomatic status. Turns out that pretty much all diplomats, all Russian diplomats, aren't really diplomats. They're basically intelligence agents. They're effectively spies. So I can imagine a time in a few months when there'll be virtually no Russian diplomats left in Europe. At least I guess I think that should be the case. You wonder whether these kind of decisions work against finding a solution to this in the end, or actually whether it's necessary to do you completely ostracize a nation to try and communicate to them that you are doing wrong, or by doing that, do you get them to go on the defensive, get their hackles up because they're you are kind of otherizing them or you're pushing them away. By pushing them away, they entrench in their position even more and try and rebut your position even more strongly. So there are 2 ways of looking at this, but I don't know, morally speaking, for me, I think it's the right thing to do is to expel staff who are clearly espionage agents. Anyway, that's my tuppence. Thank you for watching. That's the news for today. Please like, subscribe and share. check out my videos to come out later today, a frontline update video and an extra video. In the meantime, you can check out my books if you're bored. Summer's coming. We've got Survival of the Fittest Metamorphosis, Survival of the Fittest Adaptation. A nice series for you. Johnny Pierce, you can find them on Amazon or even better booksellers than them because they are trying to take over the world. Anyway, take care. Speak soon.